right, this is Smooth 98.1. Love music, love life on a Monday morning. This is the Smooth Breakfast. Yes, it has been a great morning thus far. Ayokunmi right here with you. And it's about to get better because we're going to have a conversation or we're diving into a world of conversation. This is Lagos Talks where we get to talk about different issues. We bring them to the fore. We weigh the issues, we get your thoughts, your feelings, feel your pulse more or less, and just have a great back and forth. It's also a way to learn as well. Learning is something that we definitely are very, very big on. So this morning, it's going to be all about that and an extra bag of chips as well. Welcome along to the conversation. You can join us as always. It is an interactive one. So we always love and enjoy when you come through to share your thoughts with us, your experiences with us as well. So WhatsApp is one where you can actually do that. So you can send your messages in to us on 0809 444 0981. 0809 444 is the WhatsApp number. You can also call right there if it's going to be convenient for you to do so. No worries whatsoever. The studio line is 0201 4489 981. 0201 4489 981. Now, this morning, we're going to be talking about something that came to me over the weekend. Now, it came in two phases. First of all, it came in a post that I saw where someone says that your siblings' children are your children. I think that was on X or thereabouts, and it bred this entirely thread about, oh, that is true, that is false, different perspectives, different thought processes as well. All well and good. And then later on in the weekend, I was having a conversation with a group of friends of mine, and we're talking about siblings. I don't know what led to that. We're talking about siblings, and then the sometimes untold rivalry that happens between them, unspoken in many cases, because for some reason it is seen or is seen as some sort of taboo topic, and that is one of the things where, or that's why we're looking at it this morning. It is all about taboo topics. I mean, last week we talked about divorce. We had such an insightful discussion with Aisha and Precious. This morning, we are looking at success and jealousy, how socioeconomic disparities between siblings breed resentment, especially now that economically things are not particularly fantastic. I mean, if you're a Nigerian living in Nigeria, you know that things are a bit more difficult than they were. It's pinching for more people than other. And in some families, you can find some siblings who don't even seem to notice anything is going on. You then also have the sibling that probably just trying to get by each and every single day. So we're talking about, we're focusing on, that particular aspect, how differences in socioeconomic success between siblings can breed resentment and jealousy. Now, in many Nigerian families, siblings are often compared in various ways in terms of academic achievement, career success, and even financial standing. Now, that is a big one. We definitely all know that. But what happens when one sibling is seen as more successful than the other? So, joining me today to have this conversation are two absolutely amazing women to give their perspective and, of course, their professional opinions as well on the matter. My first guest this morning is Wuraola Young. She's the founder and lead of Sisters in Business Leadership and Networks. She has a bachelor's in computer science and, more importantly, an MSc in psychology as well. So it's going to be giving us a psychological breakdown of everything. Good morning to you, Wura. Great to have you on Lagos Talks.
Fantastic to be here, Ayo. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining me. And my second guest is Zainab Oladapo. She's a personal development expert who loves helping people to also live much better lives. She's the creator of the Achieve It Already method, a framework to help high caliber women achieve their big, challenging goals a lot faster. Good morning to you, Zainab. Great to have you on Lagos Talks.
Good morning, Ayo. Thank you for having me on. I'm really excited to be here.
All right, so sibling rivalry, especially from a socioeconomic perspective, things are tough right now. Things in Nigeria, oh my goodness. This is a time where, should I say, those cracks that probably were there would come to the fore, become, bigger breaks, or that bond that was there before will be made stronger. It could be any of the two. But let's look at things from in Nigerian perspective, or from Nigerian culture, or in Nigerian culture, families often place high expectation on their children, to achieve certain socioeconomic milestones, the good education, stable careers, financial independence, getting married, starting a family, and all that. So when one sibling meets or exceeds these expectations while others don't, it can create a comparison that often leads to jealousy in some cases or even resentment. Now, I'm going to start at your table this morning. Now, in your experience from a psychological point of view, I mean, how do societal and familial expectations contribute to feelings of rivalry between siblings, especially when one sibling is seen as being more successful than the other?
Thank you, Aya, for that question. Um, so first off, you said societal and familial expectations. I would focus on the familial part because that at the end is what feeds into society. Every member of society started out as a part of a family. So it all
Right.
starts there. So whatever we have rooted in the family and valued in the family is what we take, excuse me, to society and also value. So just as you said, socioeconomic status being the marker of success, I would say that first off, if the family has placed so much value on the child who excels in academics, the child who is bringing in more money than the other, that would be the basis on which the comparison would be. And unfortunately, both in practice and in my personal life, I have seen a cases where that child, whether as a young person or as an adult now bringing in cash, has this, should I say, pride of place. And
Right, right.
even when with all good intentions, some families try not to defer to that person, it still happens because at the root of it, the values that are instilled from the family foundation was
Mm,
tilted towards external success. But if a family initially is rooted in values beyond those things that are ephemeral, then those children will not grow up to feel that comparison or be compared in terms of financial success. Actually, even comparison outside of financials is also not favorable to the well-being of the siblings or the family as a whole or society at large. So the effect at the end of the day is that being preferred to or deferred to will give one sibling a feeling of importance and another the feeling of less value. And whether we like it or not, whether by, should I say, design or default, one person has succeeded more than the other, that friction would bring what I would call resentment
mm,
and
mm.
bitterness, whether or not the people who are engineering it at the background want to recognize it or not. So that is my take on the effects of the comparison.
All right. Thank you for that, Zainab. Let me come to you right now. I mean, from the perspective of one, who counsels people, who loves to see people live more fulfilling lives at the end of the day. I mean, looking at these comparisons, how damaging can they actually be over time? And are these things that affect relationships between siblings right into adulthood? Because I'm going to take a study here that was done in 2020 by the Nigerian Psychological Society, found that about 65% of people who reported sibling rivalry attributed it to comparisons made by parents or extended family. Now, these comparisons obviously would pit the sibling against the next. When the parent says, "Oh, look at your brother, look at your sister, did this and that. Does he have two heads or she that sort of thing?" And then begins to, should I say, breed some sort of feeling in the other sibling in question. But are these the things that start from childhood and then go all the way deep into adulthood, Zainab?
Thank you, Ali, for that question. You know, absolutely. It is rooted in childhood. So what this means is that the family setup, the way the parents are bringing up the children, the choices they make is actually what sets the ground, what sets the foundation for what the siblings will become in terms of their relationships with each other, the interrelationship with each other. And whatever has been sown in childhood is just like any seed. It will grow. And when this seed grows, if the seed has been planted in the soil that isn't fertile, which means it's a family situation where siblings are compared, like you say, Ayo, siblings are compared. You are better than, see your brother, he's doing better than you. See your sister, can't you do this and that? Definitely what happens is that right there from childhood, they start to have feelings of resentment to the other sibling who is seen as favored. They have feelings of jealousy. They would end up having grudges. They might end up hating each other. Then anger starts to come in when they are growing up, such that eventually what happens to the person, the child who feels out of sorts, like he doesn't have a place in the family or she doesn't have a place in the family, what now tends to happen is that this child starts to have low self-esteem, a low sense of confidence, blames the parents for this, even though they don't vocalize it. They start feeling they're not enough. They become very angry. And definitely when they become adults, it just blows up.
Hi, Zainab. We're on a break right now, actually. The network on this side just decided to misbehave, so I had to switch networks. We'll come back in. We'll come back in
okay,
very, very
fine. I just continued because I wasn't sure what's going on and I wanted you to still have your recording.
Hopefully the hotspot behaves itself. I need to talk to engineering to check out what's wrong with the internet. It's trying to disgrace me on a Monday morning.
We shall run Monday.
I'm telling you.
It happens.
Yeah, it does. It does. But no worries, we shall soon get back in. Very, very short, about 25 seconds.
Okay.
Zainab.
Hello.
Hey. I see you.
I'm good. How are you?
Sorry?
When I saw your name, I was like, this is cool. My sister. I said when I saw your name on the thing, I said, yeah, my sister.
I had messaged you earlier. I suspected you were the Zainab. You didn't read the messages yesterday, the questions.
Which one?
All right, we are going back in. Tete-a-tete pause for now. All right, welcome back into Lagos Talks. It's the Smooth 98.1, your love music, love life station. And this is the Smooth Breakfast. My name is Ayokunmi, and we've been having a very interesting intro into our discussion this morning. We're looking at how socioeconomic disparities between siblings breeds resentment. Socioeconomic is very key because we all know the socioeconomic issues and situation that we find ourselves in Nigeria right now. So it is born out of the conversation or multiple conversations had over the weekend concerning this, and I just had to bring it to the fore. Didn't really have much of a choice. So we'd love to hear you share your stories, your experiences, what you've seen, and what you feel as well on the matter. The WhatsApp number to send messages to remain 0809 444 0981 0809 444 0981. The studio line is 0201 4489981 0201 4489981. We're also streaming on YouTube. You can catch us at Smooth 981 FM Lagos. I should also add, if you'd love to call on WhatsApp, you can do that as well, in case you are not able to get through on the studio line if you're out of the country, and so on and so forth. Once again, my two amazing guests joining me to have this conversation are Zainab Oladapo. She's a personal development expert Also the creator of the Achieve It Already method framework. And Wuraola Young, she's the founder and lead of Sisters in Business Leadership Network. Also, she has that MSc in psychology. Just have to add that there is not beans to actually do that. So they are giving us their perspectives this morning. Welcome back to the conversation, ladies. Absolutely wonderful to have you. Now, before we went on that break, the gremlins in the networks were trying to, get us in a bad way. But I said no, and we're back. So, Zainab, I asked you the question, how damaging family comparisons are over time and how they affect sibling relationships right from, childhood into adulthood as well.
Okay, thanks, Ayo. Okay, so as I was saying earlier, whatever happens in childhood basically is a seed planted, which will grow into whatever in the future. So a child who has experienced some form of comparison with parents and have experienced their parents comparing them with the other sibling, you are better than, can't you see your brother? Can't you see how he's doing? You are just silly, things like that. Or, how can you behave like that? You're all that. They're basically seeds that are being planted in the children, and seeds will grow, right? And what happens? This child starts to have resentment towards the parents, towards the siblings, who are being favored. This is in quotes because that's what the child sees. And then they tend to have grudges, they're jealous, hate starts to come in, there's a lot of judgments going on. And then what happens in this child is the child starts to have low self-esteem, low confidence, starts to blame. Sometimes children actually blame themselves for these situations. They start to feel they are not good enough. They judge themselves. So all this just creates a child that now has a lot of dark emotions, all this anger, resentment, and all that. And what happens?
Right.
It keeps growing as they become teenagers, they get into adulthood. It only gets worse, except something is done about it. And what happens as adults? They find they cannot relate with each other. They can't have conversations with each other. They might even cut each other off. They just find the relationship so difficult. And when it comes to even socioeconomic standing, there's a client that I work with who at some point in time, she had this terrible relationship with her brother. But then life goes on. And she says, yeah, I can't even talk to my brother. This is it. She had a very good financial standing at some point, but the relationship was off. Then life happened. She lost her job. She now became someone that was struggling and all that. What happened to their relationship? It became even worse. Because before she had this kind of relationship with the brother, I cannot talk to you, etc. and all that. But when she now lost the financial status she had, what happened? Her confidence plummeted. And it's almost as if she didn't have something to wave above this brother that she didn't have a good with. So it's made things worse. But thank God we're able to, I was able to intervene and things became way better. So I think that's it. It can really be very, very horrible when they become adults.
That sounds absolutely scary. I have great relationships with my siblings, so I'm just trying to imagine, us not being close to where I can't even begin to imagine it. It feels very weird to me, but it's a reality that a lot of people actually deal with that with their siblings in adulthood. Even kids right now might be going through something like that, and if arrested early enough, like Zainab said, when it gets into adulthood, it tends to get a whole lot nastier. Now let's bring this back to success and its impact on family dynamics. Now, Laura, when one sibling is successful, how does that affect the family dynamics as a whole? Do you often see cases where the more successful siblings feels the weight of family expectations? And is there also a possibility that the successful siblings begins to feel, should I say, resentful towards the less successful sibling, looking like okay, I mean, why am I the only one who made it? I'm the only one who is under pressure. And I'm disliking you, I'm hitting you because you didn't make it and you're not like sharing responsibilities. Does that ever happen when the rich sibling also feels resentment towards the less successful sibling?
I would say yes, to answer the question, but I would quickly want to agree with the things Zainab has said because as she spoke, some things about the things that happen in childhood came to my mind. And maybe because we don't treat things holistically or we approach things intentionally, raising a family needs intentionality, and you literally have to have the end in mind before you even pick a spouse that you're going to have a child with. And then when you have that child, the plan of exactly how you want your home to run and the kind of family you want to have. So thank you, Zainab, for those things you said, because it's so key that we know that any seed planted in the heart of a child when they are little becomes that massive oak that if it's a bitter bearing tree, that child is going to carry that through his life if he doesn't get intervention. And if it's a sweet fruit bearing tree, that person is going to go out into the world and be amazing and have the confidence to do good out there in society. So back to the question you asked me about whether the successful sibling feels the pressure of carrying the weight of the family. Now, I haven't read any studies about how this plays out in societies outside of Nigeria, but to speak to the Nigerian context, which is what we're talking about,
Right.
I'm sure you guys have heard of this thing called black tax. Uh-huh. Yes.
Spoken about it so many times.
Yes. So yes, the sibling would feel pressure, but it's a two-way thing. Some siblings would bask in the euphoria of being the one getting the attention, being the one that can dole out money, be the one that gives or restricts money. There's a level of power play when it comes to having money in your hands.
True.
There's a saying
True.
that the hand above is the higher hand, meaning that the person giving is in a higher status, so to speak, than the person receiving. Not that there's
Mm,
anything wrong with somebody receiving, but there is a power imbalance in the person giving and the person receiving. But some children who've got these financials, whether they got a lot of it or not so much of it, as long as they are the ones who seem to be feeding that pipeline of funding for the family, it does begin to impact on their own well-being as well. Because it now comes to, I have to continue in this job I don't like, because if the salary stops, how do I fund my parents' lifestyle, maybe send my siblings to school? My relatives are
mm,
always coming for this, that, and the other. If my business doesn't do well, what am I going to do? It could even be a case of face saving, not even as much of caring about helping them, but how do I show my face again if I don't have the money to
right.
to it's essentially to feed the image they've created. It's like feeding a monster continuously. And that monster would never get enough because I have seen it where no matter how much this successful person gives, the immediate family, the extended family, it's just never enough. And
Mm,
they would even come up with asking for trivial things that you'd be like, really? You're asking me to pay your DSTV provider subscription? Really? And they would be angry if the person says, that is not a priority. Why should I pay for DSTV when some people need to be fed? So, yes, the
right.
demand would put that person in a state of anxiety at a point, would make the person, if the person doesn't have the values instilled in terms of honesty and trustworthiness, perhaps even cut corners to keep earning more. And that leads to corruption, that leads to feeling of self-resentment,
Mm,
because whenever we go against the values that are divine, we are the ones breaking ourselves. And internally, that disconnect would begin to cause us to self-loathe, if you see what I mean. So yeah, absolutely. The person with the higher financial status may look like he has an advantage over the other one, but they too suffer. So it's not only the person who is being compared with the rich one that suffers. That person who is under pressure is also suffering. And sometimes that person's nuclear family, when he or she gets married, also suffer because then they are still demanding as much, but now this person's attention is moved away from the external family and society to my children and my spouse, you see. So yes, the pressure is almost always on for them.
The pressure is almost always on. Let me take a quick message before we take another breather on Lagos Talks this morning. This is coming from Dakwa. Dakwa says, blood is thicker than water, but at the same time, since parents have preferences, equal privileges are sometimes not granted to siblings due to the fact fingers aren't equal. Envy, covetousness, and jealousy is as a sin of witchcraft and idolatry. And it's wrong to judge a book by its cover. Difference in positional welfare should be made available without prejudice, and most times what we cherish, value, and pursue in society, and always God's will and purposes for our lives, invariably implying that we should get our priorities right by aspiring to be great and not to be famous. Popular jingles, and local champions have short-lived endowments. Therefore, I need to come and take your theology class anytime you are holding it. You've waxed lyrical this morning. Thank you for sharing your thoughts. You can come in on WhatsApp on 0809444981. Lagos Talks. We'll be back after this quick breather. Don't go anywhere. All right, pause in proceedings. We are moving.
How do you keep talking for hours and hours, man?
Because it's my work.
I know radio, but I suppose you get training on breathing exercises and all that.
Yeah, I mean that's something that you have to work on a regular. And even at that, sometimes I run out of breath, but I know how to kind of manage it, so that it doesn't seem obvious. So it
Mm.
just like goes on seamless, but deep down, I'm gasping for my life,
Oh,
in the background. But it's something I'm used to, and once you know how you can just do it in a way that's not too obvious, yeah, you're good to go. You're good to go.
Ah, cool.
Okie dokes. Let's get back into the groove. If you're just tuning in, this is the Smooth Breakfast on Smooth 8.1. Love music, love life. You're listening to Lagos Talk, where we get to have conversations about anything and disparities between siblings breed resentment. And this is off the back of the current economic situations in Nigeria. I mean, some siblings will probably be in a much better place. Other siblings, maybe not as much. And depending on the sort of relationship that they have, or they've even had from childhood, would play such a big part in how that would work out at the end of the day. So we're looking to get you to weigh in on the conversation, to share your thoughts, even your experiences as well. If you know anyone that, any siblings that have had a, a strained relationship, maybe because right from childhood it had been one way. Parents liked one child more than the other, or one child was more successful than the other, and the other child did not like that or was jealous. Hey, we'd love to get those thoughts in. Give us a call on 0201 4489981. 0201 4489981. WhatsApp number to send your messages to, and also to call on if you'd like that. It's 0809 444 0981 0809 981. Welcome back to my special guest this morning, Wuraola Young and Zainab Oladapo. We have been learning quite a bit this morning already. And of course, it never, ever ends. It's an ongoing process. Welcome back into the show. Now, let me bring this down to the aspect of jealousy. Now, this often stems from the feeling that one sibling's success diminishes the other's worth. I have heard stories about this before, where one sibling feels like, oh, because this other sibling is more successful, then I'm less of a person. That sometimes leads to the less successful sibling, trying to harm the other sibling. These things happen. It's not just Nollywood; they actually do happen. Now, for the less successful sibling, it can actually create a sense of inferiority, leading to low self-esteem or even strained relationships within that family. Now, the resentment can build silently over time, making reconciliation more difficult as siblings age. The older you get, the more solidified you are in your ways. So, should I say, break that, it tends to be difficult. Now, we're from your experience in your practice and so on. I mean, how common is it for siblings to experience, that sense of jealousy when one is perceived as more successful? And what would the long-term emotional effects be of harboring this kind of resentment?
Well, mm, it is not uncommon. In fact, I would say it's more common than not uncommon because something I mentioned earlier is the intentionality needed to start a family and raise a family. And unfortunately, that is not the norm when we raise families. The norm is boy meets girl, boy takes girl home, girl takes boy home. The marriage is done with all the pomp and pageantry. There's no serious conversation about what kind of family do we want to establish. First thing I
Mm,
said, one of the questions you asked me was, it is the family is the manufacturing hub of the society. So whatever is created there is what goes into society. So without the values necessary to preempt things like jealousy and resentment and putting material wealth and outside success as the pinnacle, then the siblings will definitely feel all these dark emotions you're talking about. And as I talk about it now, it is real to me because I literally have stories in my head of things I've seen around me and conversations I've had with clients that this is real. It's not just Nollywood, Africa magic or whatever. This
mm,
is the
mm,
reality we live. And I'm sure listeners, as they are hearing our voices, can also relate, whether you're the one with the money or you're the one with not as much money or you're the one that has been compared in one way or the other. Because weirdly, I even know of comparison of this sister is better behaved, and therefore the one with the more maybe outward character or acting out character is also compared, or one is more religious than the other. It's really weird how parents are twisted in how they raise their children. And this is after even they have
mm.
gone through some kind of childhood trauma, but they've not thought to not pass it on to their kids. But I digress. So the question you asked me about the long-term emotional effects of harboring resentment, jealousy.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
One thing I know very clearly from my study as a psychologist is that you cannot separate whatever is going on in your mind, in your heart, from your body. There's this thing called the body-mind connection. So you have somebody who shows symptoms that you would think you can pin it down to an illness, but goes to the doctor, always having migraines, has weird allergic reactions, um, could even be having stomach ulcers that is being treated but is not healing. Some cases of excess weight carrying, many illnesses are not actually physical illnesses, but they are a fallout of us carrying resentment, jealousy, anger,
Mm,
um,
mm.
what pride, all these things that we harbor, whether because of sibling rivalry, whether because we're under pressure from work, whether because we feel inadequate, we don't have self-confidence, whatever those dark emotions are, they will affect your physical health. They will. No matter how long you push it down and try to ignore it and sweep it under the carpet, you see your sibling and you're angry. You think about your parents and you're upset because you've got all these stories, all these situations that have happened that were never resolved. They will affect your health. And if care is not taken, also shorten your lifespan. That may be shocking, but there are studies about people who carry dark emotions continuously. Of course, when your health is being impacted, definitely there's a decline in your longevity. How do you pronounce that word? I know how to spell it, but I can't
Longevity.
pronounce it. Longevity. Thank you, Ayo. So yes, we cannot afford, no matter how traumatic a childhood has been, no matter how difficult it has been, no matter how demanding life is, we cannot afford to harbor dark emotions. You have to find a way, which is why the work Zainab does, the work I do, and so many amazing people out there intervening in mental and emotional health issues is so critical. You cannot go through life harboring dark emotions, no matter whose fault it is. Now it is your responsibility to look after yourself. So, yes, the
Mm.
price is high, and it's a price you can choose not to pay by stepping up and looking for help.
Hmm. It's your responsibility to look after yourself. Now, I was told this on Thursday. Was it Thursday or Friday? No, it was on Thursday, World Mental Health Day, when we are talking about burnout and stress. And I was told exactly that same thing. It's your responsibility to look after yourself. Now, Zainab, Wura said something when she was describing, when siblings see each other, a sibling will see another sibling and be angry, that sort of thing. So obviously, there have been things boiling beneath the surface for one to see a sibling and then be angry or feel resentment. What are some of those early warning signs that a sibling is actually struggling with those feelings of jealousy or those feelings of resentment, of inadequacy? And how can families nip this in the bud really early and address these issues before they become long-term sources of resentment between them?
Hey, that's an awesome question. And so yeah, the early signs. So these are early signs to what could be, I mean, what Laura was talking about in terms of when they're adults, they're now behaving like this, having all these dark emotions. So what are the early signs? So there are a couple of them. But before I get to exactly what these signs are, one thing first is that parents need to pay attention. You don't pay attention, you cannot see those signs. So one of it, for instance, is regression. And what regression is basically a child regressing into behaviors of a younger child, meaning behaviors that, you know, they already grown above. For instance, let me give you an
Mm,
example. This is not a story, it's someone that I've worked with. So a child who is a first child for about 3 years, basically the only child, doted on by the parents, had all the attention, etc. The sibling came 3 years later. And
okay.
right away, this child started bedwetting. This was a child that had stopped bedwetting.
Wait, let me understand this clearly. Child, there was a child, and the child was fine and everything, and then the parents had another baby 3 years
Yes,
later.
yes,
And right off the bat, the older child regressed
yes.
into bedwetting.
So this is an
Oh, wow.
example of the kind of regression that could happen. So unfortunately, and this child actually continued bedwetting until early teens, and that's definitely
Wow.
because parents didn't notice or they didn't connect what was happening. They didn't connect what was happening. So the thing is that these early signs, that's why I said parents need to pay attention. So it could be any kind of behavior, but when you know that this child wasn't behaving like this before, they're not behaving like a 3-year-old. And maybe they are 10, for instance. Maybe they're, so that kind of thing, that's very important, regression. So another one would be competition for attention, even if it's negative attention, because you feel you're not getting attention and I want this attention, because a child needs their parents' attention.
Right.
So if they don't get it in a nice way, they will create a situation to get it anyhow. And this is something that I can relate to because I also experienced this. I felt, and of course, it was all in my head actually anyway. This is something I realized maybe 30 years down the line that I felt my dad favored my sister more than me. Oh, it was all in my head. So, though, of course, there were other factors anyway. So one thing I know that happened was we had a conversation. Okay, I think this maybe someone could talk about later. Let me just keep with the examples of the early signs. So yeah, competition for attention. They will just they want attention anyway. Then another one would be frequent arguments, squabbling with the siblings, arguing, bickering over things, toys, space, and even the parents' affection, saying, mommy, you are always, hugging, like Baja, you're always doing this, you don't do that for me, kind of, a lot of arguments go on, and then sometimes it could be tattling, and this person did this and that, just because they want to make the other person look bad. If I'm not getting what I want, then yeah, this person too shouldn't get it, and then you could have possessiveness as well, where they just are very possessive, or maybe the things they have they don't want to share because they feel like, oh, I'm not getting attention, then why should I even share what I have, toys, etc. Then of course you could also have physical aggression, hitting each other, pushing each other and all that. And I remember that is something I remember I used to do that because of what I felt. My sister was older. I remember I would hit her because I just felt, why should she be getting all the attention? Of course, it was all in my head, just as I said. So this is real. And I'm sharing what I have experienced just to see that, it's something that it's real. And then if the parents notice and are able to, take care of it, then it doesn't become an issue. Eventually, it's solved.
All right.
Yeah, so I'm not sure. Okay, so I think you asked that how do parents address it, right? I think you asked that as well.
Yes, I did, but let's put a pin in that for now. We need to, when we come back in, we'll continue on that, and then of course begin to talk about how we can, should I say, make sense of it all, what can be done, mitigate, and so on and so forth. Lagos, keep it tuned to your love music, love live station, Smooth 98.1. This is Lagos Talks. Please, already 9:47.
This has been fun.
Yeah, it has been an interesting discussion, actually.
Yeah, bringing topic that gives somebody headache. Even the speakers will be having flashback.
Well, it's fine because if they have dealt with it, the flashbacks are not issues. So it's basically it's something that needs to be talked about, really. It really needs to be talked about.
These are issues that a lot of people tend to shy away from. They just don't like to address it. Like last week, we talked about divorce last week. We brought it to the fore, talked about it. So it's something I'm trying to talk about taboo topics in court.
In fact, that's something I love talking about. Like seriously, because people don't want to hear it.
Yeah,
and
a number of things people want to hear, but they are reality. Okay,
reality.
Time to go back in. Before 9:55, our next break. Let's get some traction. So going live. This is Lagos Talks on Smooth 98.1. Love music, love life, love conversation as well. I hope to be here with you on the Smooth Breakfast. It has been quite a morning thus far. We've been looking at success and jealousy, and of course, how socioeconomic disparities between siblings tend to breed resentment. That is something that tends to happen. One sibling is more successful than the other. The other sibling might harbor feelings of, oh, this person made it, I didn't make it. I hate you for this reason. We've seen stories where one sibling, you know, connives with others to harm the successful one, poison successful siblings, all sorts of different things that we have actually seen. And these are things that we tend to, should I say, sweep under the rug because, oh, it's within the family. We can't talk about this, but there are major issues there that, if not dealt with at an early stage, could turn out to be something else at the end of the day. So you can still share your thoughts with us on WhatsApp on 0809 444 0981, 0809 444 0981, 0201 4489 981 is the studio line. 0201 4489 981. That is the studio line. Okay, so Zainab, let me come back to you real quick. We're talking about some of the early warning signs. And then I also wanted you to tell us some of the ways the families can actually address these issues before they become huge sources of resentment going forward.
Okay. Yeah. So just like I said earlier, parents need to pay attention. Because you don't pay attention, then you do not see it. You don't see what's going on. So paying attention is very, very critical. And then you have to take intentional action. Because the thing is that children they're basically they're just like a sponge, right? And they just soak up what's in their environment. So what it means is that whatever is in that environment, they soak it up. Whether it's good, whether it's bad, they soak it up. And that becomes who they are, right? So when you are intentional as a parent, then what happens is you must tell your children, I love you. They need to hear it. It's very, very critical. We might know. The thing is that most children know, yeah, the parents love them. They might know it's like, yeah, my parents love me because they do this, they do that. But when they do not hear it, then it does not become that solid concept in their mind that my parents love me. So telling your children, I love you, like individually, and not just once, not twice, say it again and again and again. Let them know. When you do that, then they get that reassurance. They know that, okay, I am loved, because it's a human need, that need to feel loved. So it's a solid foundation for whatever comes after that. Then the other thing now is, this is still building the foundation. There's this story in the scripture that, talks about somebody was telling someone that, I bought a gift for my child. Oh, he's going to love it and all that. And then the person listening, who is one of God's messengers, said, did you buy a gift for all your children? And he said, no. He said, go buy a gift for all your children. So the thing is that this is still building that foundation. You do not show favoritism.
At all.
You don't at all. Even if in your heart of hearts, because we're human beings, we might have that. We might have a favorite child, but never let anyone see it. So once that some foundation is there and you are doing that, definitely there will be situations when the child will perceive, oh, I'm being favored for whatever reason. It may be real or imagined, or they may feel this person is being favored. It may be real or imagined. That is when you now continue with your intentional parenting. Be curious. You see anything different happening, find out what's going on. Just like this example I give about, this child starting to bedwet, that wasn't bedwetting right after the sibling was born. That a parent could be curious, okay, what happened? Why is this happening? So that's a way. You have to be an observer. You have to know what's going on. You have to know your children. And then you have to be compassionate because sometimes children will just believe that they are being, one is being favored over them.
Over
When
the
that
other, yes.
happens, be compassionate. Draw the child close and make them understand that no, you are okay, you are good enough. None of it is better. You have to continue reassuring. And these things need to be done right once they have been noticed. And sometimes you actually need to seek help, seek professional help. If you find that you're unable to just put a pin on what's going on, even after you observe that something has gone off. So when you notice a child that is excessively angry, find out what's going on. A child that, is exhibiting any of those things I talked about earlier, whether it's the anger, whether it's the, seeking for attention, showing a lot of jealousy,
Okay.
and all that. Yeah. So that's it.
All right. Very, very, very insightful words there. Let's take a final break. And when we come back in, we'll wrap up the conversation and get final words in this beautiful Monday morning on Lagos Talks on Smooth 98.1. Don't go anywhere. That paying attention, very, very key. Very, very, very key. But the thing is, I don't know, I could be wrong, but I also want to believe that in many cases, the parents will actually pay attention. But is it that they choose not to take it seriously? Because you're right, you'll grow out of it, that kind of thing. Does that usually happen?
The way I look at it is actually who the parent is being as a person. As in, because the parents too may have their own stuff going on that makes them show up in that way to their children. Because we know parents actually do that. This favoring one child over the other and all that. So they haven't resolved what is within them that is making them show up like that. So even when they realize that they're going, there's these things happening, they're like, what will I do about it? That's the way I look at it. Because you need to have sorted out your own stuff before you can actually help others.
But of course, we all know, sorting out our baggage, getting therapy or getting help is not a Nigerian thing, unfortunately. So that baggage, or as we call it now, grief case, is then passed on, to the kids, and then that cycle, it just keeps on going.
Generational thing.
Yeah, generational trauma, apparently.
But before it became a thing of maybe therapists stepping in the days of old, there used to be the wisdom of elders to resolve things like this. We've also lost that.
Yeah, true. Yes. The village is gone.
All right, let us round up on conversations. Almost 10. Knowledge this morning, talking about Wuraola Young and, of course, Zainab Oladapo. Ladies, it's been quite an insightful conversation, a very interesting one, and one that I cannot overstate how important it is that we need to have. So we need to wrap up on the conversation, and I will get thoughts from both of you, but let me start with you. What advice would you give to siblings right now who are struggling with feelings of jealousy and resentment? And really, what steps do you think they can actually take to get around it, get things back to normal, and just live regular life, those feelings of negativity when they see their siblings?
How do you resolve this? I think the first thing is to acknowledge what's going on. Whether you're the one that is giving and is wealthier, or you're the one that feels inferior or has been treated as an inferior, you need to first recognize what's going on and how you feel about it and how you have contributed to it. And maybe having a conversation with the other person is not the first thing. I think you need to have a conversation with a neutral person, especially somebody who has no stake in it. Not your parents, definitely, for starters, because emotions are raw. And this is you pointing out that some people have flawed or failed in how they've delivered their assignments as parents. So I would advise getting coming to terms with it yourself and getting help from a neutral person, somebody
Okay.
specialized to intervene. That would be my first step, really. But that acceptance is key because we tend to sweep things into the fog. And a very key thing I've noted here to say is you're somebody's ancestor, behave accordingly. Don't carry your burden into raising your own kids and repeating the mistakes that have been made because that doesn't help anybody. It doesn't help you, it doesn't help your children, it doesn't help
Mm.
society.
All right. Thank you for sharing those thoughts. All right, Zainab, you have about 30 seconds. So if you can just, compress for us, that'll be much appreciated.
Okay. Okay, so what the first thing I'll say here is with whoever you are in this situation, accept responsibility, meaning that it's only you that can change things. Don't be a
Mm.
victim, just own it. And then prepare your heart by forgiving yourself first for whatever it is that has happened. Then forgive your sibling. Then forgive your parents. And then ground yourself in gratitude. Then you can go have that conversation with your sibling. And of course, seek help. Sometimes it can get messy.
Mm.
Really messy.
Seek help when you absolutely need to. Thank you for the very wise words. Let me take two messages that came in as we round up. Sister Delgado says, such jealousy is time immemorial. Recall the story of Cain and Abel, Abel in the Bible. I mean, that just shows you that, I mean, if it's been that long, then we need to put a pin in it. If it's been going on for that long. Bobby from Kano says, the first time and he said as an African content creator, the first time my African mom said to me, thank you for something I helped her execute, I spent the whole day doubting everything. Oh, wow. She said it over the phone, and I was way past 30 at the time, and it is very recent, very, very recent. Wow. That is big.
That's
That is big.
interesting.
Very, very interesting. Well, thank you for the messages, and thank you so much, ladies, for joining me. Before we go, where can we find you on social media? I mean, for all those out there who are listening right now, who'd love to talk to you more, pick your brains more or less, and where can they find you on Instagram, on X, perhaps?
Well, that'll be at Wuraola Young on Instagram, at Wuraola Young on X as well. I'm not very active on X, but definitely Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. Wuraola Young.
All right, Zainab, how about you? Where can all our great listeners find you?
Okay, you can find me at Zainab.Oladapo on Instagram, on Facebook, and on Zainab Oladapo on LinkedIn.
All right,
And
absolutely
probably
fantastic.
channel I send some things off with useful things you might find there as well. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much for joining. It's been a pleasure. Hopefully, we'll talk more in the future about issues such as this, bring them to the fore, and just have a go back and forth and learn. All about learning. That is something very key. Do have yourselves a great Monday and rest of the week ahead.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Aya, for
Thank
having
you
me.
so much. Bye.
All right. Absolute pleasure. All right, Lagos. It has been quite a morning on Lagos Talks and the Smooth Breakfast. And well, just keep it tuned. There's a lot of great music coming your way to get you settled into your Monday money making workday. 98.1. We've got you.